Frankie's Chronicles Chapter 97, the best bolt-action sniper in Battlefield 3. So I'm going to be running through the SV98, the M40A5 and the M90B to discuss which is the best of the three. But before I do that, I thought I'd discuss what I think makes a good recon in Battlefield 3. And as you'll see here, I am using the recon class and I am in at the objective defending it, which seems pretty rare amongst a lot of recons, but I'm hoping to change this after this video, where I can show you a few little tips and tricks as to how to get better with the recon class. Now, I think that a good recon is simply determined by whether or not you get a good score at the end of a game. That's it. In Battlefield 3, if you get a good score, you have helped out your team. There is no sort of lone wolfing and doing your own sort of thing. Whatever you do contributes in some way or another, even if it's just playing as a sort of aggressive, take out the enemy team kind of guy. If you are consistently getting a high score on maps with a recon class and you're at the, I don't know, the top 2 or 3, maybe even the top of your team's leaderboard, that either means you've got a bad team or you're doing a good job. And even if you've got a bad team, you're certainly doing better than the rest, so they've got nothing to complain about. So what exactly is the recon's role within Battlefield 3? And a lot of people think that they're sort of elite scout snipers, and that has been covered over games and games of Battlefield with the people sitting on the hill doing nothing. And that will remain, unfortunately, because the recon class is the class which appeals a lot to new players, because they don't have to get in close to the action, so they can sit back and learn the game quite slowly. And honestly, if I was a new player, if I was a Bambi, I would be doing exactly the same. But the recon class has some really specific good uses for a good player. And the first of these is to use it to flank the enemy. You have got all the tools to spot exactly where the enemy are, especially if you use the MAV. And that allows you to get behind them, put down a spawn point, and then perhaps take them out from behind. You are contributing to your team as defense or attack doing that, because you're wiping out the enemy. On attack, on defense, you're taking out the enemy's tickets, which of course helps your team because that ends the game sooner. And on attack, you're sort of demoralizing the enemy and making sure that they can't pin down the other soldiers who are going for the objective. The other thing is, make sure if you're a recon to get in vehicles and take them as soon as possible. If you see an enemy tank, take it. Don't ignore all the guys who say that you're base raping or you're doing that sort of thing. That isn't what you're doing at all. That tank is going to come in and take out your team, and that's not going to be fun for anybody. So, in my opinion, it is perfectly acceptable to do that if the enemy are daft enough to let you to get into their base and not to clear it out properly, and to take their tank without getting in it in themselves. Well, they are daft enough to let you do that, so take advantage of it. The other thing is, you are meant to spot as the recon. Yes, you may have to sit on a hill a little bit more to be able to contribute and to spot, or use your MAV to spot, than you had to do in Bad Company 2, because the snipers are of course no longer a one-shot kill to the body. But please do spot if you're on a team and a recon. I know the spotting only lasts for 20 or 30 seconds, so it seems fairly pointless, but really it is one of the best things you can do to contribute to your team. So then, the actual tips I have for the recon class. Now, I'm not a brilliant, amazing, super duper recon because I play all of the classes, but these are a few little things I've learned. And the very first thing that you're going to want to set up is your graphical options. When you're playing as a recon, good visibility is absolutely essential. And one of the best things you can do in this game to improve visibility, if you're on PC, is to turn off HBAO. Turn it off completely, and also turn off motion blur, and if you've got low frames per second, make sure you turn off the anti-aliasing option. If you do all of these things, you're going to have the right number of frames per second, at least 60, and well, you'll be able to set your resolution to make sure you can get about 60. You won't be particularly accurate sniping if you've got less than that, and you're going to be able to see people very, very clearly, and it gets rid of some of the contrast. The next thing to do is to make sure you know how to aim with a sniper rifle, and this is actually a little bit less patronizing than it first seems, because I know a lot of people are really good at sniping, but some aren't, and this is for the few who aren't. Basically, a lot of aiming down the sights with a sniper and getting on target is to do with moving your feet, as in the D and A keys on your keyboard, at the same time as aiming in with the scope. You'll find yourself a lot more accurate if you strafe to get some headshots than if you do just trying to use your mouse. because the two combined allow for far more precise actions. So which is the best bolt action rifle then in Battlefield 3? Let's start from the top with damage. The SV98 and the M40A5 are pretty much identical. They do 75 damage at close range up to 20 meters, which then drops down to 55 damage at long range. So they both will kill in 2 shots at any distance to the body. They've both got exactly the same clip size of 10, 11 if you've got one chambered. They've got the same rate of fire and seemingly the same reload speed. The M98B does 95 damage, which is significantly higher at close range, which drops then down to 59 damage at long range. It's got a far smaller clip, half the clip size of 5, 6 if you got one chambered, and the rate of fire is slower, and I think also the reload rate is slightly slower as well. The next thing to consider when choosing a rifle is how they look, because that does make quite a big difference. I personally like the way that the M40A5 looks. I think that is one of the prettiest, but then again the M98B does feel a little bit more powerful than the M40A5. The one downside of using the M40A5 over the SV98 is that it does take up quite a lot of your screen compared to the SV98. The character does hold it quite a lot higher. Now for the attachment. Basically, I always use the 12 times ballistic scope. I know in Bad Company 2 the high-powered zoom scope was lambasted, that's right, lambasted, by people because they thought it was for noobs camping up on a hill, but the Battlefield 3 maps are really large and I find myself missing headshots left, right and centre without using the 12 times zoom scope. As my second attachment, I always use the pull bolt. I don't find the bipod that useful and the suppressor neither, because generally you're going to be slightly further away from people, so the suppressor doesn't help, and the bipod, you're going to get taken out by another sniper if you sat using that. As for my third attachment, basically the underbarrel attachment, I tend not to have one. I don't really find the laser sight that useful, and it sort of gives away your position, as does the tactical light. Sidearms are pretty easy to choose. Go for the G18, which does 20 to 13 damage. It is very powerful, or the Magnum, which does 55 to 24 damage. The Rex is pretty good as well. Now as for your equipment, I've tried all of the equipment, and if you're playing as a team, the SOFLAM can be very, very useful to take if you can laze for somebody with a javelin. But generally, if you're playing in a public server, other engineers will not use the SOFLAM, so I've found that you're better taking the MAV as your main piece of equipment. Because the minimap is so difficult to use, it is far better at spotting for your team than the TUGs or whatever it's called is. It's also, in the next patch, going to be used to disable mortars, so that should be pretty good fun. My one criticism of the Recon class is that it can't be used as a close range tool like it could be as effectively in Bad Company 2. Hopefully they'll change this, hopefully they'll patch in C4 explosives for recons or something like this. I hope this video was useful for you guys. I hope even if you're a good recon already, probably far better than me, there was something useful in it for you. On that note, I will see you guys in the next chapter.